guys, Mike, your host of Craft Beer Storm. How are you on this Monday? It's the start of the week, and that means we have an interview for you today. We are, I do a lot of beer stories and a lot of other alcoholic beverages creep in, like seltzer. And this week we're gonna talk about a distillery in Everett, Massachusetts. It's Short Path Distillery. And I interviewed two of the founders, Jackson Hewlett and Matthew Kurtzman. They're making some good stuff. I got to go down there and try some. But first, hey, did you go on iTunes? Do me a favor. Go on iTunes. Give us a rating. Give us a review. Subscribe to the podcast. That would be awesome. That means you get it when we issue these. We do 3 a week. 3 podcasts a week. Mondays, like we're doing today, we're interviewing somebody in the beer industry, but now distilling. And also Wednesday we do craft beer style. We pick a different style from the Great American Beer Festival. This is over 100 of them. So we pick one a week and we go through it. And then on Friday we do craft brew news, the news of the week. So you got 3 podcasts coming at you each week, and they would be automatically downloaded if you want. You subscribe. Don't have to look for them. And give us a rating, give us a review. That'd be awesome. But getting back to the interview, I would like you to take a listen. And here we go. And we have Jackson Hewlett and Matthew Kurtzman. They're the founders of Short Path Distillery in Everett, Massachusetts. How you guys doing?
Doing great, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Doing
good, Michael. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it was nice. But you have a third partner too, right? He couldn't make the call.
Yeah, we do. Our master distiller and our third business partner, Zachary Robinson, was unable to join us tonight.
All right, cool. So I was looking at your website. I know you're in Everett, Massachusetts, which is close by. Your night shift is close to you?
Yes, we're very close to night shift, about 500 feet from night shift, and we're also 500 feet in the other direction from Bone Up Brewing Company.
You guys are all together. Everybody can just go to one neighborhood and visit all of you. Wow. That's cool.
It's great. We've got a little, we call it the fermentation district in Everett, which is nice. It's a great spot. You can park once and sort of bar hop between our fully functional cocktail bar as well as the tap rooms over at Bone Up and Night Shift.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I just had Michael on, one of the founders of Night Shift. He's a good guy. We had a podcast on him. But yeah, I was looking at the website. You have like gin, whiskey, rum, ouzo, which is cool. But maybe tell me a little bit about your story. How you got started, your backgrounds when you started the brewery. Where you're going.
Sure, we can absolutely do that. So in 2012, Jackson, Zach, and I, we started what we called the Scotch Night. And at Scotch Night, we got ourselves together with about a dozen friends. We each threw down $50 or so, and we chipped in to buy a couple of really high-end bottles of single malt whiskey from Scotland. Stuff that if you're trying to buy it by yourself, kind of out of your price range. But If you split it with a couple of good friends, you can have a little sip of something that's really old and delicious and expensive and rare. And we were drinking some delicious old scotch one evening, and we decided that we would want to try to make it ourselves. And that turned into a hobby, which turned into a really serious hobby, which then turned into a business plan, which then turned into fundraising, which then turned into real estate hunting. And then in June of 2015, we opened up our production facility and cocktail bar to the public, and it's just been going great ever since.
That's awesome. Now, did you have a background in distilling, or you just figured it out, or how did that work?
We had a different combination of skill sets. It's actually Zachary who's really got the background in distilling. He's actually got a master's degree in chemistry.
Wow.
And at the time when Matt and I were all getting together and having a good time during Scotch nights, he was working for one of the pharmaceutical companies that's located in Kendall Square, and was basically doing distillation of to isolate chemical compounds for drug research purposes.
Right.
And he was using his education that way but it wasn't something that, he wanted to do for the rest of his life. And this, given the opportunity to put those distilling skills to a more fun purpose, took the opportunity to jump in and try something out on the beverage side of the world. And this was sort of an idea that we hatched at Scotch Night, like Matt was mentioning, where it's like, well, what would it take to make these amazing Scotch whiskeys that we were drinking on our own? And Zach, who had the background, spoke right up and said, hey, well, let me tell you guys about distilling. And that was one of those steps down that slippery slope that led the three of us to a distillery.
Wow. But he's like the mad scientist, right? So he got you into distill. Did he distill at home? Did he do it at home? Or I don't even know if it's legal to do it at home, or, I mean, you don't have to answer that if you're going to get in trouble.
Technically it's not. Unlike brewing beer, where as long as you don't sell it to anybody, you can make beer at home and share it, and sky's the limit. The government does frown upon home distilling operations. There's a certain amount of safety issues with flammable alcohol vapors and that kind of thing that make it a prohibited act. So we really got our start just doing infusions in alcohol to get an idea for some recipes, and then doing a little extra due diligence in the dark of night, and coming up with the recipes. And once we got something that we were pretty satisfied with, at least for the gin, figured we'd make a go of it.
That's cool. Now, when did you open the distillery?
It was June of 2015.
Oh, 2015. Okay. So almost 5 years. I mean, 5 years next year, yeah. So, you guys opened around the same time I did. I think it was late 2014. And it's the same thing. You just get together with a bunch of friends and, it's like, hey, we were all like, yeah, we're going to open, we're all home brewers. Yeah, we're going to open a brewery. Yeah. And then a couple of us did, a couple of us didn't. I was one of them that did on my own, which I probably should have had partners at the time. But, I kind of did it from, I was a home brewer, and then I just kind of went from 5 gallons to 200. And even 200 gallons is, it's great to serve in the tap room. If you want to make crazy amounts of beer, you need a larger system. But tell me about the process, the distilling process itself. I mean, I've brewed, and I know it's similar, but maybe you can walk us through the whole distilling process. Give us an education.
Yeah, sure thing, Michael. So, like you said, it really is a lot like brewing. Part of the process. We'll take you through the process of our whiskey, for example. It really starts out with 3 of the same 4 ingredients in beer. We're starting with water, yeast, and grains. In the case of our flagship whiskey, that's 100% barley in our recipe. And you take that, you ferment it up until you get something that's around the same alcohol strength as a beer, minus the hops. And once you're there, you end up, you've got something with a fairly low alcohol content, and you want to end up with a finished product that has a high alcohol content. So somehow you've got to separate the alcohol and the flavors away from the stuff that you don't want. And the way you do that is you take advantage of the fact that alcohol boils at a much lower temperature than water does. Anyone that's cooked, like a dessert with some sherry in it or something like that knows that you can put the alcohol in the dish, you cook it for a little while, and the alcohol is gone, but the flavor is there. And distilling is more or less the same thing. So what we'll do is we'll take that, it's called a mash, once you've fermented those grains and yeast together. And you take your mash, you put it in your still, and you heat it up. And what happens is the first thing that turns from liquid to gas is primarily alcohol, along with some other flavor compounds that boil at around the same temperature as alcohol does. So what you do when that happens is you've made that separation. You've got the stuff that you want that's now gone from a liquid to a vapor, and you've left all the stuff you don't want behind in your still. So you've got this alcoholic vapor that now you've got to condense it back into a liquid. So that's the second step of the distillation process, is taking that alcohol vapor, cooling it back down to the point where it condenses, just like water droplets, say, form on a cold glass of beer on a hot summer's day. it's water vapor in the air that hits the cool surface of that glass and turns from vapor to liquid. And we're doing the same thing with that alcohol vapor inside the still, cooling it down. It's going from gas back to liquid. And then it comes out of the still as what we call distillate. And that distillate, if we say put a wash into the still at maybe 7 or 8% alcohol, that distillate might come out at, say, 35% or so, which gets us most of the way there for our whiskey. Our whiskey bottle strength is about 40%, but when we put it in a barrel to age it, it's usually a lot higher than that too. It's either anywhere from the mid-50s up to 70%. It sort of varies on the style of whiskey you're trying to do as well. So we're actually going to run that distillate through the still a second time to further concentrate that alcohol and the flavors again, and raise the alcohol content and remove more of the water and the flavors we don't want away. So after that second distillation, you've got a product that's somewhere around 65 to 70% alcohol, and at that point, it's ready to go in a barrel, which is really where a lot of the magic happens as well. For someone, I don't know, Michael, if you're a big whiskey drinker, but when you take a sip of whiskey and you get those really nice spice notes, and some caramel notes and vanilla and things like that, you're actually tasting the barrel that the whiskey's been aged in. Those are really big barrel notes, and certainly things that parallels you might see sipping on a whiskey or a barrel aged beer too. That's really the flavor that the barrel aging process brings to the table. So by doing the aging, you've got that alcohol kind of letting it mellow out. It's going to take the edge off. You know how meatloaf's always better the second day after you cook it? You just got to wait long enough, and those flavors really just kind of meld together in a really nice way. And that's what the barrel aging process is all about. So that's basically it from start to finish in a capsule.
So tell me what kind of grains you use in these different, because I don't understand. I mean, I don't know. I've never distilled, so I don't know what you use. Like, say for a gin, you use certain grain. For a whiskey, you use other grain. Or is that correct? Or
yeah, exactly. So for something like for like a bourbon, there's very or a rye whiskey, there's very specific requirements for the type of grains that you can use. So, like, for example, a rye has to have at least 50% rye in your grain bill.
Right.
Something like a bourbon needs a certain percentage of corn as well.
Okay.
For us, on our flagship whiskey, we use just a pretty much a straight 100% barley grain bill, and we actually get that from a malter out in Western Massachusetts, Valley Malt, and they source from local farms all the way from Western Mass through upstate New York as well. And in particular, some of the, I believe the strain or the varietal of barley that we use is called Endeavor.
Wow. Yes, I know. Yeah, they have Valley Malt, and it's great that you use your local ingredients because we're all about local as well. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We care a lot about that. Our flagship whiskey uses 100% ingredients that are sourced from around New England, including the barrels themselves. So they're actually made out of Maine oak and made by our guy Ed up in Portland, Maine at Portland Barrel Company.
No
does
kidding.
A great job making our barrels to order. Yeah, we love it. It's a huge perk. That's another reason to buy local is most barrels are made from American oak, but it's usually sourced from the southern half of the U.S. where the climate's a little warmer. And the difference in oak trees up here in New England is that they grow a little less every year, so those growth rings in the tree are a little closer together. And that allows the tree to actually retain a little more sugar in the wood itself.
Uh-huh.
So by using a Maine oak, you actually get a little extra sweetness added to the flavor profile by using Maine oak as opposed to a southern oak.
That's interesting. I never knew that. I learn something new every day. And I get my barrels from Portland too, but I get them from Allagash and they get them from Jim Beam. So it's from the South.
Oh.
But, I mean, it's delicious what they do. They do the curio in those. And then I get them and I, just wash them out, like 200-degree water, kill everything. And then I put like a stout in or a strong ale. and it comes out delicious. It just absorbs all the flavor from the wood too, and people love it.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and we enjoy certainly collaborating with our used barrels as well. Once we've finished the barrel, we can usually get 1 or 2 uses out of a barrel, sort of depending on what we're making. And after that, you're just not getting enough flavor in there for a spirit, but there's still enough flavor left for beer, which is great. So we actually usually sell our used barrels to our friends around the corner at Bone Up Brewing Company, who do a lot of great,
oh wow,
just like you said, some stouts as well. Actually, I just had a chance to sample. They did a milk stout that was aged in our rye barrels and had a really wonderful character to it.
Wow. Wow, I wish I would have known you guys sooner. Now we got you. So if I do some other experiments in the future, I'll let you know. But yeah, I mean, you also use copper in the process. Is there any reason why I always see copper, like copper kettles?
Yeah, copper's a pretty good. It's a good conductor of heat, so it's a little more efficient at allowing us to fire our still and be as energy efficient as we can reasonably be. As the other character that copper brings is I'm searching for the right word here, but it has the effect of reacting with some sulfur compounds and scrubbing those out of your fermentation. So, when yeast are doing their thing, eating the sugar that's in your mash and converting it into alcohol, they're making all these byproducts. And it's not necessarily a huge issue in beer because it's so dilute. But when we're in the distilling world, you're really concentrating all those things. So some of those compounds that are undesirable but aren't really noticeable in beer suddenly become an issue when you're distilling things.
Okay.
So copper actually can react and catalyze sulfur compounds and remove them from the finished product and improve the flavor profile. You can certainly get away with stainless steel. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not going to have the same effect that copper does. And at Short Path, we prefer a more traditional style of still and means and methods as well. We really enjoy trying to take sort of these really traditional, old school, old world methods and kind of combine it with, Boston's history of innovation and a new world approach to reinventing things. And hopefully we end up with spirits that are the best of both worlds.
Yeah, it looks pretty good what you're doing. I'm looking on your website here. And how did you get the name Short Path?
So Short Path is actually, it's kind of a double entendre. So one way we think about Short Path is the scientific meaning. And Short Path is a method of distillation that we use at the distillery. And kind of the idea behind that is the shorter the path between where the alcohol is vaporized and where it condenses back into a liquid, the more flavorful the end product is. And because we are using that that methodology to do the distillation, and we have a very scientific way of developing our recipes and doing research development, we kind of wanted to have a scientific meaning towards our name. But there's also a cultural element too. And the idea behind Short Path as it pertains to the cultural piece is that the shorter the path between where something is made and where it's consumed, there's a smaller footprint on the environment. And that's something that's really important to us, making sure that we're using all of the products and trying to make it as local as possible, and then taking our products and having people who are also local enjoying them.
Yeah, it looks great. That's interesting. It's all science, right? It's all chemistry and science. You got to know what you're doing. You can't just go ahead and just heat stuff up and expect to have a good beverage. It has to be done correctly, and you have to use the right materials. And I guess heat, temperature is a big factor. And then you use yeast. When is the yeast introduced into the liquid? Do you know?
That usually comes right after we've gone and mashed in on the grain. So we're going to cook that grain up just like you would brewing. And then once you've heated to the target temperature for at least for what we're doing, then you're good to cool it back down, let those proteins that you started to denature and unwind a little bit do their thing. Some of the starch is getting converted to sugar, and then you just pitch the yeast in. It's pretty analogous to brewing.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, because yeast, if it goes over a certain temperature, you start killing it. But yeah, that makes sense. So, I guess local is great. I mean, you say you have local ingredient. I guess you use local ingredients in some of your products. I guess is it all? Do you use any like flavorings or anything like honey or anything like that in your products, or?
We do one of the gins that we make is our summer gin, and we use local Maine blueberries for that one. That's one of our favorite products, certainly around the summertime. And there's nothing better than a than a gin and tonic on a summer day, in my humble opinion. And what we do is we make a recipe for our gin that's similar to our flagship style of gin, which is sort of a pretty laid back and easygoing gin. It dials back the juniper, which gives us a little more room for like a nice floral, botanical flavor profile that's a little less hitting you in the face with a Christmas tree, and a little more kind of a garden flavor profile. So we take that gin, and then once we're done, we actually soak that gin in blueberries for a couple weeks and fuse it that way. It gives it a real nice deep amber, or deep burgundy color, almost like a red wine.
Wow.
And that's lovely. Some of the other flavored spirits that we make are an ouzo, like you mentioned earlier. We do a recipe with a combination of licorice root, licorice seed, and star anise that gives our base spirit a nice character there for a nice digestif as well.
Very nice, very nice. Sounds really good. I must try some. So
yeah, and one of the nice things about the spirits world is that you have the sky's the limit with a lot of stuff. And sure, there's certain spirits out there like bourbon or Scotch whiskey that have very strict, well-defined and government-regulated recipes and methods to make it and be able to call something straight bourbon. But there's also categories of distilled spirits that are wide open for innovation and stuff like that. So something like the summer gin is something that sort of fits into that category where the sky is the limit. It gives us a lot of creativity. We can use pretty much any botanical we want to. And it's a ton of fun. And it's sort of what keeps us going too. We've got some flagship spirits that we really love and our customers enjoy as well, but we're constantly releasing new stuff through the cocktail bar in small batches. We've got a winter Amaro. We've been doing a few different recipes for an Amaro, which is just like a nice digestif for an aperitif that you can sip before or after your meal as a palate cleanser. And that's where we can be at our most creative. It's great. It's building on sort of some of the botanical combinations that have worked well in our gin, and then translating that with some extra stuff as well, like especially local apples and stuff like that. We're really fortunate to be up here in New England. I'm sure you know this as well. We've got apples. People don't necessarily think of New England as a huge agricultural center, but cranberries, apples, blueberries. I mean, these are things that really, really work well in spirits, and we're certainly happy to take as much advantage of those things as we can.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I use honey too, and maple syrup, and yeah, it's all good stuff up here. Really fresh stuff. It's very good. What are some of the challenges in your distilling business? I mean, today, are there a couple of distilleries around you, or are you? I mean, I'm not sure how many are around you.
Yeah, we definitely have a couple of distilleries that are in the greater Boston area. And our view with some of the challenges is one is making sure that we're developing a brand that is something that we can sink our teeth into and stand behind with some pride. And we do that by making sure that we put a ton of time and effort and energy into creating amazing spirits, but also on the other end, creating an experience in which people can enjoy spirits through cocktails at our bar. And then at the other end, making sure that our spirits are available for people who are not necessarily in Everett, and making a cohesive brand experience. And it really takes a village in order to do that. And keeping on top of all of the levers that you can pull to influence the decision making to ensure that experience is always great is always a challenge.
Oh yeah, just to focusing in on
Yeah, Matt said it really well in that, you know, it really does take a village, because craft distilling is an industry that's sort of in its infancy here. It sort of feels like craft distilling is where craft brewing was maybe in the late 90s. You know, there was enough people out there doing it that it was in the public consciousness, but hadn't really sort of bubbled up and emerged in a big way like it would, you know, 10 or 15 years later. So, you know, with the other distillers that are in the greater Boston area, there's some products that we make that overlap, and then there's some products that we make that don't, but we all sort of believe that a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
And, you know, the more we can do to turn people on to craft distilling is sort of the natural, you know, thing. If you're into craft beer and you like the, you know, exploring new styles of beer, give craft spirits a shot. You know, it's got the same ethos, the same DIY. Let's, you know, do the classic styles as best we can, with a twist that is whatever that local ingredient is, or really just blowing the lid off of something with some new, just off the wall spirit that no one's ever heard of before and is really unique, that are going to really pique people's interest too, in the way that some of the extreme beers or the super funky beers that a lot of people aren't super familiar with are in the brewing side. There's really a lot of parallels that we see, and knowing that craft distilling hopefully will continue to grow in the same way craft brewing did. You know, I think we're all optimistic for the future.
Wow, and yeah, I guess in the beer industry too, the craft beer has been eroding share from the bigger guys year over year. It's like another percentage point. You know, and in the beginning it was like, all right, whatever. But now it's starting to affect them. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they're getting affected, and they're just launching these campaigns to either buy breweries or just kind of steer people away from craft beer, which is not, you know, I mean, and distributors as well. So that's the reason why I did this podcast as well. You know, I'm one of the small guys, and I feel that stuff, you know, and I just don't approve of it. And I think people should just go out and have a choice. And usually a lot of people don't know that there's local breweries or distilleries in their neighborhood, you know, and it's crazy. So we're just trying to make them more aware of it. I mean, do you see that happening with the large distilleries too? Are they kind of, I'm not sure what their marketing is or what their tactics are, or how much of your share, like how are you taking away from the large distilleries?
You know, it's sort of tough to say, given how nascent the industry is and how a relatively small percentage of the market share we have. And I think one of the things that's probably going to play a big factor in how that dynamic evolves over time,
right?
And hopefully it evolves, you know, in a way that avoids some of the negative sides that that you see and I see too in craft beer, is that at least on the spirit side of things, you've got a lot of spirits that have been around for hundreds of years and have a very specific flavor profile, or spirits that are, you know, where the brand name is the spirit, you know, something like Grand Marnier, like that's just, you know, it is Grand Marnier, even though it's really just kind of a barrel-aged, high, you know, full-strength triple sec in some ways. So, you know, where craft brewing sort of filled a void, you know, there just wasn't these local brewers or local alcohol producers, you know, for people to go to, and everybody was just getting from the same, you know, nationwide spirits manufacturers. There still are some very, you know, niche brands in distilling that are still big, so even if, someone like Short Path, we've got our own triple sec that we love and we're pretty damn proud of. We're still going up against another pretty darn good triple sec. We don't always have as much edge on just, being able to amp up the flavor and give someone for the first time a real full-bodied beer that they've never had before.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, you might have someone come in who's been drinking scotch for 15 years and wants to try our whiskey for the first time. That person's coming at it from a different angle than someone who's, maybe gone, is in their late 20s, has enjoyed craft beer, and now they want to sort of expand their horizons beyond that as well. So, there's a lot of different dynamics, and it's interesting to see how it all play out, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Like I said, the distilling business, I guess it's pretty much in its infancy in terms of smaller distilleries popping up, and it's becoming more and more prevalent as you move along.
Yep.
So.
And we see a lot of restaurants are sort of driving interest in craft distilling as well. This is something we've seen in the last couple of years. Maybe Matt, you can chime in on this one too if you think of anything. But there's some restaurants out there that they might be a gin bar, or they have 50 different gins on their shelf, but they're also, in addition to having the brands of gin that people know really well that are nationwide or worldwide, they are having the local gin producers, or in a few cases, especially, I'm thinking one here in Boston, where, one of the other distilleries, Bully Boy, in Boston, they make a gin,
right,
and they also make a special recipe for a couple different restaurants in Boston, so that those gin bars can have their own house gin that's made locally too. So that's kind of an exciting new avenue for getting your spirit out in front of someone, where you can, instead of consulting or starting with spirits brands that are hundreds of years old and are the tried and true brands that are still very good spirits, you can walk into your local restaurant or gin bar and have something that's local and that bar has crafted in collaboration with the distillery as well.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So who do you distribute, I guess, or do you sell everything in-house, or how's that work?
We both sell through our cocktail bar. Our full lineup of spirits are available at the cocktail bar. We do have a few exclusives that we only sell through that, but we do go through distribution. We actually go through night shift distribution.
Oh, no kidding.
Like you said, you had a chance to talk with them. And yeah, when they blew through the cap on that Massachusetts puts on how much beer you can brew in a year and still qualify as a craft brewer, when you exceed that limit, just how the law goes, you have to go through a distributor instead of being able to self-distribute. So, Harpoon Brewing was actually, I believe, the first one to do this in Massachusetts. And so they hit that limit. And instead of signing on with a third-party distributor, they just started their own distribution company to distribute their own beer. And Night Shift followed the similar model to distribute their own beer. And they've also picked up a few other beer brands, and including some spirits, and including Short Path. So you can find our spirits in just about anywhere else you can find Night Shift beer.
Oh, interesting. So, and Massachusetts doesn't have, they don't have state-run liquor stores, right? They have kind of Cappies and stuff like that.
That's correct. Yeah, we're not like New Hampshire. Yeah, that's correct.
So you sell direct. You can sell directly. Well, you use a distributor, you say. Now, can you self-distribute too, or you got to do either or?
Yeah, we can self-distribute. We could. It sort of all depends on the agreement you strike with your distributor.
Mm-hmm.
But we still have that choice. We're still under the limit, so we're distributing by choice, and then we'll see what happens when we hit that limit.
All right, cool. And then you have like a tasting room there as well?
Yeah, exactly. It's a site where we've got our production facility. We've got a fully operational cocktail bar that serves cocktails featuring Short Path spirits. We're open 7 days a week over there. and we've got usually do some release events, trivias on Thursdays. It's a good time. We try and keep it friendly down at the cocktail bar. We also do tours on the weekends as well.
That's great. And people can purchase bottles, I guess, from your facility?
Yep, exactly. We've got the full lineup always available at retail through the cocktail bar, and then we're in about several hundred different accounts, primarily in Eastern Massachusetts as well, through like your Kathy's or your other corner liquor stores, as well as some of the grocery stores like Wegmans, Whole Foods, that kind of thing.
Oh, wow. That's great. Those are good stores to be in. Awesome. All right. Hey, well, this has been a great conversation. I learned a lot about distilling, which I didn't know about before, which is interesting. And I think you guys are doing a great job. I got to come down and try some of your stuff.
Yeah, we'd love to have you down, Michael.
Yeah, I got to come down. Absolutely. But we'll make it down there. But I appreciate you being on. And, I wish you the best of luck. But we'll catch up.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Have a nice one.
Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, that was Matthew Kurtzman and Jackson Hewlett. They are the founders of Short Path Distillery in Everett, Massachusetts. They have their fermentation row, I think they call it, or area, where they have two breweries, and then they have their distillery right next door to each other. So it's pretty cool. And in Everett, Massachusetts, and they're making great stuff. It's very interesting, the whole distilling process. I never knew I never distilled anything, and it's great to understand the process now, and I know what they're using. And I mean, I drink whiskey and other things, but it's just you always try. How is this stuff made? And they've explained it well, and they're making good stuff. So if you go, make sure you go check them out. Short Path Distillery. In Everett. And that's your show for today. Please go on iTunes, give us a rating, give us a review. I would appreciate it. Subscribe to the podcast. That'd be awesome. That gets us up in the rankings. We can't get up otherwise, unless people start liking our stuff and doing. We got more and more downloads each month, which is awesome. We're breaking records monthly. We got a ways to go, but we are growing, which is cool. And we're trying to give you the best content as possible on our Craft Beer Storm podcast. We're also doing craft beer events at hotels. If you have a company, you want to do a corporate event, and you want to do something for your employees, we'll come in. We'll talk about beer, give you a presentation. We'll go through different styles of beer. If you're at a hotel, whatever you have on tap, we'll get it. We'll give them a sample. We'll talk about the beer, where it come from, the origination, the style. Go through the whole thing. Just educates people, and it's great for your employees. Also, guests. Hotels, if you have guests, do something for them. You get them, give them a guest appreciation night. It'd be awesome. Get them out of their room. Why do they want to watch Netflix? Get them into the lobby. So that's what I have for you today. I wish you the best day Monday. And we're going to back to you on Wednesday with another episode of Beer Styles. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.